The second Victoria 3 dev diary has been published, and this one is a bit complex, but let's go over it together and see what it's all about. The new dev diary introduces the concept of capacities. It is interesting to see that the developers have made an effort to emphasize that capacities are not mana systems like the one we have in EU4 with monarch powers. The first capacity is bureaucracy, and it deals with the internal management of your country. It's very similar to administrative efficiency in Victoria 2, but this time it seems like it will be a mechanic that we will need to look after for the entire duration of the game, as it is no longer static and depends on several factors. In Victoria 2, once you reached 100% administrative efficiency, you could essentially forget about it unless you conquered new territory or established new colonies. But even then, it didn't matter that much since the majority of your income still came from your core territories. In Victoria 3, taking new territory will mean that the government will be strained by the need to administer the new territory, and until you can expand your bureaucracy, the whole nation may start to suffer penalties because it wasn't ready to incorporate all the new population and territory. Which makes sense, because if a country that only has 10 million in population needs to govern a population of 300 million, it will take time to adjust, or it may find itself incapable of doing so. Now, some of you may think that the British managed to do this in India, but we have to take into account that in India the British did very little direct administration and ruled mostly through proxy rulers. The bureaucracy capacity is certainly a solution for China and may put off players from grabbing territories in China, which could simply do more harm than good if the entire administration of their empire collapses once they suddenly need to administer 100 million more people. Bureaucracy is generated by bureaucrat pops who work in buildings called administration buildings. This suggests that you will need to build these buildings in newly acquired territories, as well as to make sure to hire bureaucrats to work in these buildings in order to make sure that the capacity of your bureaucracy does not fall behind. The next capacity is authority. It is generated by the laws of your country and the skills and traits of your head of state. Authority will be used to conduct various actions, such as enacting decrees in certain states. These seem like the EU3 style province decisions. Interacting with interest groups. There is no mention of what interactions are available, but I assume it means you will be able to increase or decrease their influence on the government, or perhaps even ban some of them. A very interesting interaction that is done with authority is the ability to ban certain types of goods, which sounds very much like the option to initiate an embargo on specific goods entering the country. And this sounds like a very powerful action. Imagine having a rival country making a huge amount of money by selling goods to your pops, and you, as the monarch, having the power to cut off their revenue in one single action. Hopefully, we will have the option to micromanage and select which country we want the goods banned from. The third and last capacity mentioned is influence. This one is used for diplomacy and is meant to represent the ability of your country to conduct diplomacy, as well as to limit the amount of countries you can conduct diplomacy with simultaneously. This sounds very much like the Victoria 2 diplomatic points, which were pretty much a tool used to stop players and the AI from spamming diplomatic offers to everyone around them. But unlike Victoria 2, it seems like this time it won't be enough to just wait until you generate more points to send a diplomatic request. Instead, each diplomatic action will deplete the amount of influence you gain, so at some point you will need to choose if you should break off a treaty with one country to replace it with another one. The generation of influence capacity is dependent on the rank of your country, so great powers will generate more of them than non-great powers. And this is again very similar to how diplomatic points were generated in Victoria 2 as well. Also, I hope that this is not the final terminology that the devs have decided to go with, but the dev diary mentions the terms great powers and major powers, which personally I find confusing. Victoria 2's terminology was very distinct and clear. When you hear the terms great powers and secondary powers, you have no doubt about which one of these you want your country to be, which doesn't feel the same for great and major powers. Alright, so in conclusion, overall it seems like the capacities were inspired by EU4's monarch powers, but they are generated differently and have very specific in-game mechanics they are responsible for, instead of being tied to every single action in the game. Balancing something like this for the 100 plus countries that are available at the start of the game will no doubt be a nightmare, but it's good to see that Paradox have decided not to take the easy route, since mana systems, such as the one present in EU4, feel very gamey, and I'm glad to see they're not making a comeback with Victoria 3. That's it for this dev diary analysis. If you found this video helpful, give the video a like so that others can see it as well. Subscribe to the channel to be notified on future videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.